The fork felt unnaturally heavy in my hand, a small, silver anchor in the sea of suffocating silence. The scent of rosemary from the roast beef, usually a comforting Sunday aroma, was acrid in my nostrils. My mother, Susan, was arranging her peas into a perfect, joyless line with the side of her knife. My father, Mark, cleared his throat, the sound cracking the tension like a stone through thin ice. Chloe, my younger sister, stared at her water glass as if it held the secrets to the universe. Anna, my father began, placing his own fork and knife down with surgical precision, framing his half-eaten steak. Your mother and I have been talking. This was never a good opening. It was the preamble to a request, a demand disguised as a family discussion where my vote had already been cast for me. Usually it was about money. The boiler was making a funny noise. Chloe's car needed new tires. Their property taxes had gone up again. I braced myself, running a quick mental calculation of my liquid assets. I can probably swing another 2,000 this month if I postpone the server upgrade. But it wasn't about money. Not directly. "You're 28 now," he continued, his gaze sweeping over me, a cursory inspection that always left me feeling wanting. "You have a good job. It's time." My mother looked up, her expression a practiced mask of maternal concern. "What your father is trying to say, dear, is that we think it's time for you to find your own place, to stand on your own 2 feet." The words landed without impact at first, like stones dropped into deep water. I heard them, but couldn't feel them. Move out? I lived in their basement suite. It wasn't ideal, but it was practical. I paid them rent, a generous amount I'd insisted upon, and contributed to bills, groceries, and the endless stream of unforeseen expenses that constituted their life. More than that, I was the family's silent, unacknowledged benefactor. "Move out?" I repeated, the words tasting foreign in my mouth. "We need the space," my father said, his tone hardening, as if my simple question were an act of defiance. "Chloe is thinking of turning it into a proper art studio. She needs room to grow, to explore her talent." I glanced at Chloe. She flushed, refusing to meet my eyes, her focus still resolutely on her water glass. Chloe's talent was a series of ever-changing, expensive hobbies funded by my parents, which, by extension, meant they were funded by me. Last year it was pottery, the year before that, silversmithing. The kiln and anvil were likely collecting dust next to my boxes in the basement storage. "We just think it's for the best," my mother added, her voice softening into a coo that set my teeth on edge. It was her manipulation voice. "It will be a wonderful adventure for you." An adventure. They were kicking me out of the home I quietly paid for and calling it an adventure. A bitter, dark laugh threatened to bubble up from my chest. I swallowed it down. It was a spectacular piece of absurdity. For 8 years, since I'd graduated college and landed my first job in software development, I had been their safety net. I was the one who paid for the new roof 3 summers ago, when the estimate made my father turn pale. I was the one who covered the difference in Chloe's private university tuition when their savings fell short. I was the one who made the quiet wire transfer each month, a sum that just happened to be the exact amount of their mortgage payment, disguised as rent and utilities. They thought my good job was some sort of mid-level office drone position. They'd never asked for details, never shown any interest beyond the fact that it provided a steady stream of cash for the family coffers. They had no idea that my quiet, unassuming career had escalated, that I was a senior architect at a major tech firm, that my stock options had vested, that I was, by any reasonable measure, wealthy. I had never told them. It felt boastful. And, on some deeper level, I knew that revealing my success would only escalate their demands. My value to them was my utility, not my accomplishments. Okay, I said. The single word fell into the silence, heavier than my fork. My father blinked, surprised by the lack of argument. Good. We were thinking you could be out by the end of next month. That's fine, I said, my voice unnervingly calm. Inside, a slow, cold rage was beginning to crystallize. It was the end of a very long, very quiet delusion. The delusion that if I just gave enough, helped enough, was enough, I would finally earn the simple, unconditional regard they gave Chloe for just breathing. My mother smiled, a genuine, relieved smile that hurt more than the demand itself. Wonderful. See, Mark? I told you she'd understand. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur. They talked about Chloe's new artistic vision for the basement: track lighting, new flooring, a skylight. They were spending my money already, the money they'd save by no longer having me there to subsidize their lives, while simultaneously planning to spend more of it on renovations. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. I ate my cooling roast beef, my jaw tight, and said nothing. Driving back to my partner Liam's apartment later that night, the streetlights smeared across the rain-slicked windshield. He had been warning me about this for years, in his gentle, patient way. "They don't see you, Anna," he'd said one night, after I'd vented about having to buy my father a new laptop because his was too slow for Sudoku. "They see a resource." I had always defended them. "They're just bad with money. They're from a different generation." Now, his words echoed in the quiet car, stripped of my defensive rebuttals, leaving only the stark, ugly truth. He listened now as I recounted the dinner conversation, his hand resting on my knee, a warm, steady pressure. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just listened. "The worst part," I said, my voice cracking, "was the relief on her face. She was so happy to be getting rid of me. She's happy because she thinks she's getting what she wants without having to acknowledge what she's losing." Liam said wisely. "They have no idea what you actually do for them." "They're about to find out," I whispered. When I got to his place, I didn't cry. The hurt was still there, a dull ache behind my ribs, but the anger was sharper, clearer. It was a clarifying force. I opened my laptop, the sleek silver case a world away from the clunky machine I'd bought my father. I pulled up a file I hadn't looked at in months. It was a simple spreadsheet titled Family Support. I started it years ago, just to keep track. Now it was my indictment. Line by line, the story of my last 8 years unfolded in stark black and white. June 2016, roof repair, $18,500. September 2017, Chloe tuition shortfall, $12,200. January 2018, August 2024, monthly rent transfer, $2,800, x 79 months, $221,200. The list went on. Cars, dental emergencies, property taxes, home insurance premiums, that disastrous kitchen renovation they started and couldn't afford to finish. I documented it all. The small, insidious requests and the massive, life-altering bailouts. My fingers flew across the keyboard, adding up the columns. My breath caught in my throat. Total: $482,750. Almost $500,000. I stared at the number, feeling a wave of nausea. I had poured a fortune into a black hole of their making, all for a seat at a dinner table where I was told I was no longer welcome. The cold rage hardened into something else, something solid: resolution. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I logged on remotely and sent a few critical emails. Then I called a number I had saved in my phone for over a year. It was a high-end real estate agent, recommended by a colleague. "Eleanor Vance speaking." Her voice was crisp and efficient. "Hello, Eleanor. My name is Anna Sterling. I'm looking to buy a house. Cash offer, quick close. There was a slight pause. Okay, Mrs. Sterling. What neighborhood are you interested in? A slow, wicked smile spread across my face. It felt alien and wonderful. Maple Creek. Specifically, I'm interested in anything available on Crestview Drive. Crestview Drive. My parents' street. Eleanor was good at her job. Within an hour, she had sent me a listing. It was almost too perfect. A stroke of cosmic, ironic justice. Directly across the street from my parents' aging, perpetually in need of repair colonial, was a stunning modern build. It was all glass and clean lines, a stark architectural rebuke to the fussy, cluttered home I grew up in. It had been on the market for a few months. The price tag a little ambitious for the neighborhood. $1.2 million. There's a for sale sign right out front, Eleanor said over the phone. A big one. I know the one, I said, picturing it. I'd walked past it 100 times, never once imagining myself inside. It was a house that belonged to someone else, someone successful and unburdened. It was about to be mine. I'd like to see it this afternoon. Walking through the house with Eleanor was a surreal experience. The ceilings were high, the rooms flooded with natural light from floor to ceiling windows. The kitchen was a minimalist dream of stainless steel and quartz. From the massive window in the main living area, you had a perfect, unobstructed view of my parents' house. I could see the patch of roof I'd paid for, the bay window of the dining room where I'd been excommunicated. It was a house built on transparency and solid foundations. A metaphor so on the nose, it was almost comical. I'll take it, I said, standing in the center of the empty living room, my voice echoing slightly in the vast space. Eleanor, ever the professional, didn't so much as blink. Excellent. We'll offer full asking price, no contingencies. They won't be able to refuse. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork and wire transfers. I drained a significant portion of my investment accounts, the numbers on the screen shrinking with a dizzying speed that should have been terrifying. Instead, it was liberating. This wasn't money disappearing into the void of my family's needs. It was being transformed into something tangible, something that was mine and mine alone. I signed the final papers in a sterile lawyer's office, my hand steady. The keys felt cool and solid in my palm. I didn't tell my parents. I let them believe I was apartment hunting. They'd call occasionally, my mother's voice laced with a cloying sweetness. Find anything yet, dear? Don't forget, we need you out by the end of the month. Chloe is just so excited to get started on her studio. I'm working on it, I'd say, my tone flat and non-committal. The 30th of the month arrived. It was a crisp, bright Saturday. At 8 a.m., two massive moving trucks rumbled down Crestview Drive. I watched from my new, empty living room, sipping coffee from a paper cup. The trucks didn't pull into my parents' driveway. They pulled into mine. I saw the curtain in their front window twitch. A moment later, my father appeared on their porch, a mug in his hand, his face a mask of confusion. He stared at the moving trucks, then at the house, then back at the trucks. His brain seemed unable to connect the two. Then he saw me. I was standing in the frame of my new front door, which I had propped open. I gave him a small, polite wave. His jaw dropped. He set his mug down on the railing with a clatter and marched across the street, his bathrobe flapping behind him. He didn't bother with the walkway, stomping directly across the pristine new lawn I had just paid a fortune for. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice a low growl. He was trying for intimidating, but he just looked bewildered. "What the hell is going on, Anna?" "Good morning, Dad," I said calmly. "I'm moving." Moving. Here? What is this, some kind of sick joke? It's not a joke, it's my house. I gestured vaguely at the gleaming glass and steel behind me. I bought it. He stared at me, then at the house, as if trying to solve an impossible math problem. The numbers weren't adding up. The daughter who lived in their basement, who they assumed made a modest salary, did not buy million-dollar houses. How? He finally sputtered. How could you possibly afford this? All that money. You should have been helping us. We're your family. The moment was finally here. The years of resentment, the sting of that last dinner, the cold, hard number from my spreadsheet, it all coalesced into a single point of unshakable calm. The rage was gone, burned away, leaving behind the cool, clean certainty of truth. I have been helping you, I said, my voice even, devoid of the emotion he was expecting. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to state facts. I have been helping you to the tune of $482,750 over the last 8 years. He flinched as if I'd struck him. That's a ridiculous lie. Is it? I tilted my head. Let's see. 18,000 for the roof in 2016. 12,000 for Chloe's tuition in 2017. The new septic system in 2019, that was 22,000. And of course, the $2,800 a month, every month, for the last 79 months, that just so happened to cover your mortgage payment. His face went from red to a sickly, mottled white. He knew. Of course he knew. He just never expected to be called on it. He had relied on my silence, on my desperate need for their approval. I kept records, I continued, my voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. I have a spreadsheet, every date, every amount. It's quite detailed. So, you see, I have been helping. But my help is now officially and permanently concluded. You wanted me to stand on my own 2 feet. Well, here I am. He stood there, speechless, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Behind him, on their porch, my mother had appeared, drawn by the commotion. Her hand was pressed to her chest in a gesture of theatrical shock. You don't have to worry about the space in the basement anymore, I said, my gaze shifting to her. Chloe can have her studio, but the skylight and the new flooring? You'll have to figure that out on your own. I stepped back inside and closed the heavy oak door, the click of the latch sounding like a final, definitive period at the end of a long, painful chapter. The fallout was immediate and predictable. My phone began to buzz incessantly. My mother left a string of tearful, hysterical voicemails. How could you do this to us? After everything we've done for you? This is so cruel, Anna, to flaunt your money in our faces. The texts from Chloe were more confused than angry. What's going on? Dad is yelling and Mum is crying? What did you say to them? I didn't reply to any of them. I put my phone on silent. Liam arrived with pizza and a bottle of champagne. He found me sitting on a packing box in the middle of the vast, empty living room, just looking out the window. So, he said, setting the food down. How does it feel? Quiet, I said. It feels really, really quiet. We spent the evening unpacking essentials, the sounds of our work echoing in the house. We ate pizza on the floor and drank champagne straight from the bottle. Later, as the sun went down, I stood at the window, looking across the street. The lights in my parents' house were on. I could see their silhouettes moving from room to room. They looked small from here, contained. They were no longer the giants of my childhood, their moods dictating the emotional weather of my entire world. They were just 2 people in a house that was no longer my problem. A text came through from a number I didn't recognize. A cousin. Your mum called. She said you've lost your mind. What's happening? The family grapevine was buzzing, the story undoubtedly being twisted into a narrative of my cruelty and their victimhood. Let them. The truth wasn't a story they could control anymore. Over the next few months, a new normal settled in. I furnished my house, room by room, filling it with things that I chose, that I loved. Liam officially moved in. We planted a garden in the backyard. I learned the rhythms of the neighborhood from a new perspective. I saw my parents coming and going. Sometimes my father would be out mowing the lawn and he'd see me. His shoulders would tense and he'd turn away, focusing on his task with a furious energy. My mother stopped appearing on the porch altogether if I was outside. They were ghosts in my old life, and I was a constant, unavoidable presence in their new one. One afternoon, Chloe came over. She stood on my doorstep, looking nervous. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated for only a second before stepping aside. She walked into the foyer, her eyes wide as she took in the space. "Wow," she whispered. We sat in the living room, the huge window framing her childhood home behind her. "They're a mess," she said quietly. "They had to take out a loan to pay the property taxes last month." "I know," I said. The notice had come to their house, but my name was still on the account. I'd ignored it. They said you were selfish, that you were punishing them." "Do you think I am?" I asked, a genuine question. She looked down at her hands. "I don't know. I went through some old bank statements. Mum asked me to. She was looking for something. I saw the transfers, from you. For years. The amount, it was the same as the mortgage." She looked up, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You paid for everything, didn't you? My school, my car, all my stupid art supplies." "I wanted to help," I said. It was the simplest version of the truth. "They let you," she said, her voice filled with a dawning, bitter understanding. "They just let you." We sat in silence for a while. It wasn't an awkward silence, but a shared, mournful one. We were two very different casualties of the same broken system. "I'm getting a job," she said finally, squaring her shoulders. "A real one. I'm moving out." "Good for you, Chloe," I said, and I meant it. My relationship with my parents never recovered. There was no tearful reconciliation, no grand apology. Their patterns were too ingrained. But in losing them, I found myself. I found a peace I never knew was possible. A quiet that wasn't born of tension, but of contentment. Tonight, Liam and I are hosting a dinner party. The house is filled with friends, with laughter and light. From my kitchen window, I can see the house across the street. It's dark, except for the blue flicker of a television in the living room. For a fleeting moment, I feel a pang of something. Not regret, not even sadness. Just the faint, phantom ache of what could have been. Then Liam wraps his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "Everything okay?" he asks. I lean back against him, the solid warmth of his presence a welcome anchor. I look around at my beautiful, light-filled home, at the life I built, not out of spite, but out of necessity. "Everything," I say, turning away from the window, "is perfect."